Many people have problems with art and not with reality.
So why is art different?
It's pretty simple, right?
This is knowledge, this is thinking, this is thought.
Yeah, it does something strange with your head.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair.
Bring it.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. My name is Ando. All right, we are back once again. Thanks for joining us, guys. We just had a whole weekend at Code Art Fair, selling our snake oil to the uninformed public, stuff like that. Actually, it was another in a series of attempts to engage with an art-going public and to try to get a hold of folks to come on the program, meet people, talk about stuff, talk about art. I would say it was a mixed blessing for me. There are certainly some lessons to be learned for the next time around. But we did talk to a lot of people. We saw a hell of a lot of art, and we moved a lot of furniture in and out. It turns out it is actually hard to get people on the mic. I think art fairs, as much as they might seem like a lot of people standing around and chatting about nothing, is actually a lot of work. People are exhausted. People are constantly trying to make connections, looking forwards. They're not really present in a lot of ways. So it also didn't help much that we ended up in kind of a strange middle hallway. Next time around, we definitely need a spot kind of more central inside of the actual art fair. But we did have two great talks with two cool new friends. Martina Tosi from the newish gallery, Cinnamon, which is based out of Rotterdam and has a really forward-thinking kind of platform. They had a really great stand during the fair. And we also talked to Stephen Cox, the Scottish painter, writer, and he's the proprietor of a little site you're going to love, which is called Hunted Projects. Be sure to check out the links to that on the show notes page for this episode. They both came by, talked about their work, their impressions of the fair, and about art in general. If you guys were at Code, I'd be really interested in hearing what you thought also. You can write into us. Everything's there on our website, undergang.net. But I'll leave it at that. Let's go straight into it.
I'm here with Cinnamon. We are a young gallery based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And we just started a little more than 1 year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're
That's
kind
really
of new.
new.
Yes, we're kind of new.
That's exciting.
Yes, very much.
What's your role there?
I'm the assistant of Peter. Peter is the owner and the founder of Cinnamon. Yeah. And his background, he was an artist before. And after a while, he just decided to open a gallery because he thought it would be really interesting to nourish and find and expose new artists in the international scene. So he spent almost a year doing some research around, asking other galleries and visiting art fairs, himself as a visitor, of course. Mm-hmm. And then he made a decision. He found a place, and he started a gallery in Rotterdam.
That's pretty wild. I mean, considering how hard a business it is to get into,
Yes.
It's so protective and it's so closed off in a lot of ways.
In a way it is, but I had an internship with him for 5 months, so from February till June, and during that time we spoke a lot about the art world, and I asked him a lot of questions, and in reality I thought it would have been much more competitive and much more closed off. But he told me that actually most of the galleries are quite happy to give advice and to share how they started their own company, their own gallery itself.
That's nice to hear. That's not the usual story that you hear.
It's not the usual story, but also my assistant, Sylvia, she's planning to open a gallery. She's opening a gallery herself.
Oh, wow.
In Den Haag, in The Hague. Mm-hmm. And she did some research herself, and she said that a lot of people are really open to give advice, and Peter was one of these persons.
Well, that's great. I mean, yeah, it's just it's not the usual story. But yeah, I mean, have you guys been? So you're only a year and a half old, you say?
Yes, we opened in April 2014.
How? I mean, obviously, there's it's not uncommon that artists open galleries, in a way. I mean, there's one here, for example, in Copenhagen.
Yes.
And he did it because he said he was tired of seeing all his friends, kind of like good artists, people in his network being passed over, and no one was showing their work. So he decided to do it as kind of a, it sounds maybe a little fluffy to say a community thing, but he did it because he was part of something he could see, and he wanted to show that. Did Peter feel the same way, or was it more?
I think it was much more of a fascination about how the art world works. In the sense of how it's commercialized, how it's distributed, how it's advertised.
Right.
From what I understood, he always had very much of a passion of connecting with people and going around at openings and in museum, talking to the curators, to the right person, and meeting them. So I think he always had this fascination, and he decided to pursue it a little bit more. But what I admire most of him is the not naivety, but this kind of thrill that he still gets at looking at other people's work.
You really have to be able to keep that, know, because after you just
agree.
think about people, maybe who've been in it for 20 years, and they get that 1,000-yard stare in their eyes, where it's just kind of like, just get me through this,
Yeah, I agree. And no, I think he still has that, even though he's seen a lot of art and he produced a lot of art himself. But that's what I think is most precious about him.
What about you? Do you come from an art history background, or are you also an artist?
I'm a photographer myself.
Yeah, me too.
So yes, I come from an artistic background. I'm actually originally from Italy. And I moved here. To the Netherlands, to Rotterdam, to study photography as well at the Willem de Koning Academy. And from that, I found Peter through an internship. And I thought that it would have been... I was really willing to work in a gallery, so not for an artist, because I was interested myself in how the art market works. But at the same time, I like very much the environment of Cinnamon, how it is, also because it was a new gallery.
Right.
So a lot of the things are... all the roles are not exactly fixed, so there is a lot of maneuver in a way to experiment, to see, to get to know how it's done behind the scenes, and that's what I really appreciated in the 5 months that I spent there. But I think in a way that also the artistic background is it's really important.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, either it's usually art history or practice themselves who kind of bring people into it. And then the danger is, as a working, as a studio artist or, someone in the practice, you can fall into the commercial side of it,
Yeah.
And it's a weird balance, because it's really important to have that view, too, to really know how it works. That's super important. It's part of the reason that this podcast exists is to talk to people and see how things work, because it isn't a mystery.
Yes.
In reality, it may feel like it. It may look like some sort of closed off, walled off system, but you just have to get a job or do something connected to it. And then all of a sudden, it's humans trying to do their best at whatever it is they might be doing.
Yeah, trying to live off of their means. Yeah, it's very true. At the same time, I think it seems closed off from the artist's point of view, because it's something they don't teach you at school. In a way, they try to prepare you for what's out there, but you will never know enough or what's going on, even though your teachers are artists themselves. So in a way, they have had experience with this kind of dynamics.
Yeah.
But it's something that you discover maybe a little by little. So it looks very closed off at the beginning, but like you said, once you start, it just goes a little bit with the flow.
Yeah. It's hard too, though, the whole, how do you approach You know, because as soon as you're in a position of showing artwork or having some sort of platform for artwork, people come just flying at you. You know, and it's really hard. You have to put up some sort of wall because you could spend all day answering emails.
Yeah.
You know, just from people saying, hey, I want to show work, you know, and so there has to be some sort of filter, some sort of way to go through it. And you really realize that when you get on the other side. How much shit comes flying in your face every day. You know, and that's tough. It's tough because, you know, you may perfectly good artists, nice people you'd want to engage with. If they come at you at the wrong day in the wrong way, you just can't. You don't have the energy to deal with it.
Yeah, in a way, that's very true. What I think Peter does while selecting artists, or more than what he does, what he tries to always keep in mind is that you have to be thrilled about the work. If it doesn't convince you 100%, if there is something that you cannot exactly figure out, it's not that it's not worth showing it, but you wouldn't have the same passion in advertising it and making up an exhibition.
It's hard to sell something you don't love.
Exactly.
That's true.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So in a way, one of the advices that he gave is not to show your grandmother's paintings just because they're your grandmother's.
Right. Or your friends.
Or your friends, which is even a little bit more harder, because if you come from an artistic background, there's really a lot of good stuff.
Totally.
Around.
Totally. And I mean, it's tough because you maybe want to help people. You like people. You know, personal relationships can actually kind of get in the way.
Sometimes it does. Also because artists are kind of eccentric themselves.
Yeah.
They have different personalities. They have different way of working. So you have to, not saying deal with that, but you have to take that into account.
Right.
But that does not mean that it has to stop you from showing them or featuring them at an art fair.
Right. Right, if you feel that way about the work.
Absolutely.
Do you have are you at all part of the selection of artists or the curation, or are you more on the practical level?
Not really, in the sense that we discuss about the artists themselves, but it's more of an opinion of what do you think about this.
Right. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so we try to play ourselves like. One of the two is like the devil's advocate, and
that's good.
Yeah, exactly. If at the end of the conversation he's still convinced, then it's okay. Then it's good.
Right.
But coming also from different background, because Peter is a painter, so he's really good at selecting artists, painters, and people that have that kind of ability, and. I'm not, but I'm a photographer. So at the same time, when I see an artist or someone who uses photographs of himself to produce other works, I have a really different point of view. And that kind of compensates a little bit. Because Peter, he's not a photographer himself. He doesn't know what kind of technique is behind it. And I've had a little bit more experience, but in the selection, sometimes there also come this abilities in a way.
Right,
that you
a diverse
develop.
background helps kind of create some sort of synergy. Do you guys or can you see from his side any sort of greater plan for what he wants to build, or is it really just gut level? I like this. I don't like this.
No, he's very. He does a plan which goes also through the year. So I think in June we had already established I think 80% of the program of this year, of the season.
Well, that makes sense, yeah.
Maybe not 80, but a good 70%. Also because after the first year, you feature some artists that you really like, and they have new works to show. But he's very oriented also in art fairs, for example. So we applied for a bunch of art fairs, and we participated a lot of art fairs for a gallery that only has 1.5 years.
That was something I wanted to ask about what, I mean, because it seems like, I don't want to say it's early, but it seems like you guys are really just going for it in terms of art fairs, and that's true. It is the primus motor for a lot of the art world now. It's where you meet people. It's where you talk about.
Yes.
You see new artists. A whole thing. It all happens around art fairs, but they're expensive.
They're very expensive, but the thing is that Peter strives to be as international as possible.
Good idea.
So I think the Netherlands, we only participated at Art Rotterdam, which is the art fair of our own city. So in a way, it makes sense that we are there, we are present there. But at the same time, the art fairs gives you a really big chance to show your work and connect with people in different regions of Europe, because this is, for example, our first Scandinavian art fair. We participated in Artisma in Turin last year. We are doing another project the next month. October in Turin again. So we're trying, and we had, for example, another project in Brussels. So what we are trying to do, what he's trying to do, is trying to show himself, the gallery, the artist, as more international as possible. So, of course, it comes with a cost. But if you are willing to invest in it, if you have the possibility to do it, then I would suggest you to do it.
It's the fastest way.
It's the fastest way.
It's the fastest, most effective way just to get out there.
It's the most effective way.
You know, and there's a lot of... There's a lot of meowing about art fairs and their role, and it's not necessarily unfounded either. But like it or not, this is the system we're living in right now.
Yes,
and this is, like you say, if you want to be international on any sort of level outside of the city where you're located, you got to go to these art fairs.
Yeah,
it's the clubhouse, it's the group, it's the roving pack of maniacs. It's everything.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like you say, it's probably the best investment there could be. In order to get out there, and also just if you want to see new artists.
Yeah, that's very true. And actually, I made a mistake before. We had participated also at Unseen, which is a photography fair.
That's a great fair in Amsterdam.
Exactly. But the nice thing is that Peter chose to show a group of artists that uses photography as a medium, but they don't do photographs. And I think that's also important because even though it's one medium, art fair, you still try to bring something new in it.
Right.
And in a way, that's also a good way of meeting people in galleries that are from another background, that have another aim.
Sure. Well, there's a whole photo world going on in Amsterdam now. There's a whole thing happening.
Yeah, that's very true.
And you can totally see it through Unseen and Foam.
Yeah.
They're really there's a very kind of like. There's a movement going on down there, and that's that's also good to take part in that. But you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Bring something else,
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to get down there. I really do want to check it out. Foam seems really nice, but I mean, it must be exciting for you personally as a photographer too to be in Amsterdam to be in Holland.
Yeah.
And kind of being near some sort of movement that's happening.
Yeah, well, in a way it's true, but it also, Amsterdam is quite a closed-off city as far as the art scene goes, in a sense that it very tries to keep to itself.
Right. Well, it's the big city. They have their reputation to keep up. It's New York.
That's very true.
It's London. It's
yeah. But in a way, also there was a choice of being established in Rotterdam. It's not something that just happened.
Okay.
And it's the fact that in Rotterdam, even though you have quite a lot of art galleries by itself and a really big art scene, even on the photography side, you don't have that kind of closed ranks. You have the kind of freedom to experiment quite a lot.
A little more open.
A little bit more open. So it's you have a little bit more breadth. And that also comes with the fact that there are different artists that you would like to feature and also of what the art scene brings into Rotterdam, which is a little bit more experimental than what they do in Amsterdam.
Is the public of Rotterdam very supportive? Are they...
Yes. I think both the people that live in it, so the inhabitants, and both the tourists. For example, we had there was a really big exhibition of Ugo Rondinone in May, and now we have Olaf Aureliusson at the Boymans.
That'll bring a lot of people.
It really does, but it's very experimental. And if you don't have the space, if you don't have the open-mindedness to do it, it seems just a little bit too much, just a little bit too contemporary, just not enough so the public can appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, that's always that weird balance you have to run, you know.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, but in a way, I think it's much more interesting if you take this kind of risk, that you show something that maybe cannot be shown anywhere else.
It's so tough, you know, because it is a matter of making sure you've got enough to make it happen. And, you know, enough, and it's far enough out there to keep it interesting.
Yes.
You know, it's that weird balance because if you go too far out, it can be hard to secure enough money to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just that weird balance, you know, and people also get tired of working for free for years and years and years. You know, it's really interesting to get something up and going, but at a certain point you're like, I would just like to be able to go on vacation.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, that's very true.
And so there's that weird kind of mix of kind of desires and realities and all that sort of stuff that needs to come together in you know, in creating a space. And there's all sorts of different concerns. And it's the same with an art fair, too. You'd probably want to come and create something crazy, but you also have to concern yourself with making enough money to pay for your trip, at least.
Exactly. Yeah. Luckily, in the Netherlands, you have, I think, I don't know about the other countries, but I think you have a wider possibilities regarding the funding and the helps from the government. For example, there's the Mondrian Fonds in the Netherlands, who also helped us with some funding for the booth.
That's great. It gives you so much freedom.
Exactly. And maybe it also it gives you freedom and it's less stressful. I mean, you are able to enjoy the fair a little bit more and not to just tackle...
Are we going to go broke?
Exactly.
Are we going to go broke?
Just to tackle every person that comes in and said, do you want to buy it?
Right. You need to save our day.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality in a lot of these cases. But I mean, here in Denmark, there's a pretty tremendous support system for the arts, which does give, you know, a certain degree of freedom, at least from the absolute grinding pressure just to keep things going. You know, I have a lot of appreciation now for how hard it is to run a commercial art space.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, you know, it's every exhibition you have to sell. Something. Something needs to happen, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And if something doesn't happen, at least you have a little bit more time in a way as well to try and see how it could be better, how it could change.
Right, and you have to foster relationships, and you have to, you need people who come and support what it is you do.
Yes, I agree. But both financially, but also on a personal level.
Right,
I think.
Absolutely. Is Rotterdam the second largest city in Holland?
I think it's The Hague, the second largest.
Okay.
Also because The Hague, is more international in the sense there are a lot of embassies there, and so it's not the financial but the political pole in the Netherlands. Rotterdam is quite large, more for the conurbation of the city.
It used to be an industrial city, right? Or very, very industrial.
We have a really big shipyard. We have a really big port.
That's right.
That's mainly the reason of the city itself.
The reason I ask is because I really love... it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier about how Amsterdam is a little more closed off, a little more perhaps conservative.
Yes.
And it's the same in a lot of places. It's the same... I lived in Chicago for a couple of years, and it is way more kind of like we'll just fucking try it, fly, a little more punk rock, I guess you could say. And it's the same, the second largest city in Denmark is called Aarhus. It's the same sort of deal there. Like, the bigger, more established cities, the capitals, the ones with, old art scenes, those sort of things, they have the tendency to be a little bit more conservative and a little bit harder to get into.
I think it also becomes with the history of the city, in the sense that Rotterdam was bombarded in the Second World War. So the upper north part of the city center was razed to the ground. They had to rebuild everything. It was only my academy, one hotel in the city center, and the cathedral that stayed up.
Wow.
And also this fact that they had to rebuild it, they had to make it new, and they're always trying to change for the better and for the modern looks in a way. It also gives you that kind of feeling for your life in a way itself.
Right, the building forward, the building from the rubble, making new things happen.
Yeah, and also the constant renewal in a way.
Well, who do you have with you guys? I want to hear a little bit about who you're showing at your booth this time.
Yeah, so we're showing 1, 2, 3, 4 artists. It's 2 Dutch artists and 2 Norwegian artists. So on the Norwegian side, we have Johanne Heswell, who is a new, very young Norwegian artist that is very much concerned with the politics, with the mechanics of minimalism. And she's doing this new series of modified windshields, which is also what we're showing here. And she was featured also in an exhibition in Italy that was made to show new Scandinavian artists, so from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Sweden.
Where was that?
In Brescia.
Okay.
It's a small center, small town near the Garda Lake. So she did this really interesting exhibition with another group within this group of artists, and Peter decided to feature her in September for the upcoming season, so for the opening of the season, and she's going to do a solo gallery, so she will have the front of the gallery for her own works. And as also in the Norwegian scene, we're showing Lars Morell, who is, we can say, mid-career artist. And he's very much interested in the dynamics of illusion and illusionism. And that is always referring to those big stage illusion, those really
kind of classic,
exactly.
almost suit and tie or bow
with
tie,
a top hat.
big hat,
exactly. And but he, for example, we are exposing here, which is also what we expose in Art Rotterdam and at our gallery, a series that is called Ink on Paper. And from the Dutch side, from the Dutch art scene, we have Paul Gele, who is a Dutch artist that is very much concerned with the discovering of the new life elixir. So making a sculpture out of a liquid. And then we have Isabel Andriessen, and she is an Amsterdam-based artist.
She's also Dutch.
She's also Dutch. She's also very Dutch. Actually, she studied in Malmö for her master.
Yeah. That's a very good school, actually.
It's a really big school. And she studied in Malmö for her master, and that's why also she's showing the same piece that we have here in an exhibition in October, I think. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go and see it, it's at Gallery CC
in Malmö.
In Malmö, and we're showing. She's very much concerned with art pieces that change during the time. Mm-hmm. So, for example, her first exhibition, Cinnamon, was featuring a word called the mesh, which consisted in this perforated metal slabs, really big metal slabs, on which mushroom grew.
I've seen those, I think.
And it's really nice because she built her own evaporator, so to of course vaporize water and keep the
to make it humid,
the moist in the room. And the thing is that the first couple of days, you couldn't see anything, and then if you could come back, you could see the mushroom just the tiniest bit, and then growing.
So each day it looks different.
It looks different,
Yeah.
and that's also what she did with this piece, on which she had a different kind of inspiration because she was concerned. She was inspired by a post-apocalyptic landscape, so she was trying to give a feeling of how this landscape would feel after the extension of the human race.
Now I gotta say, for a commercial gallery, this sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah,
I mean, it gets a good amount. It's good for attention, but it's hard to sell.
It's hard to sell, but at the same time, I think it's so wonderful because it's a piece that it's always new. That
Well, the
it's
truth
always
is, there's
different.
also a career in arts where you do exhibitions. You don't have to sell necessarily, and you can have a relationship to a commercial gallery, which tries to work with your existing practice of temporal or impermanent types of work.
Yeah, I agree. But I think also in the booth we try to keep it in between, in the sense that also when we featured Isabella in Turin with the mesh, so with the mushroom piece, a lot of people came for the attention of what that artwork was capturing,
Right.
and looked at the booth. And also with the pieces that we have here, there are some. I don't want to use the word commercial, but there are some approachable pieces,
Right.
and others like this, which take the attention.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a good balance. It's a very good balance, I think.
So what's next for you guys? I mean, it's weird to ask that if you're only a year and a half old, But what's the future looks like? What's the next year look like?
We have the opening of Johanna Hesvold, featuring another artist in September. So basically the week after we come back from Code.
Sure.
And from Marseille, because Peter is now in Marseille, showing at Artorama.
Oh, wow. So you guys are in 2 fairs right now?
Yes, we are in 2 fairs.
Good times, good times.
We are Team North. And so we basically we can say the season started off with these 2 big fairs.
Right.
And we're starting the season at the gallery with this exhibition. And then we have Unseen Art Fair.
That's coming up,
fair,
that's right.
at the end of October, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have a project which is called Dama, and it's going to be featured in Turin at Palazzo di Saluzzo. And then we have, of course, other exhibition coming in.
Sure.
And for more or less, this is the first part of the program. Then I think we have Art Rotterdam as well in February. And we're trying to see if we can be accepted at Miami. That's mirrored. We're trying to always be active in that sense, and see what the chances are that come in as well.
Sounds like you guys have a lot to do
Yes.
for the next couple of months.
Yes.
Cool. Well,
That's
thank
very
you so
true.
much for coming over and talking to me.
Well, thank you to you. It was wonderful. It was really nice.
There we go.
Is it good?
It is good.
Okay.
Cool, man. Thanks for finally sitting down.
No problem. No problem.
So I guess, we just met each other, but you're doing a lot of things here, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm doing a few things here, yeah. Primarily came over to see friends, see some interesting work, and then doubled up with going to be writing a review of the fair for Blue and Art Info.
Well, not only that, you're also a working artist yourself.
Yes, I am, but I'm not exhibiting here at Code this year. So.
Sure, but it's always a good thing to get out, meet people.
Yeah, of course. I think if anything, because I don't have that kind of connection with a fair by show my work, it kind of puts me in that position where I'm a little bit more free just to kind of talk to whoever I want to talk to. Whereas the artists who are present, they're all pretty much just staying at their own booth, and they're not really moving around too much.
Right. That's I've definitely found that to be true here. Just trying to get people to come by to this little media hallway here. This purgatory.
Yeah, it's a little bit like limbo.
It's funny. It's like because people, when they're here at an art fair, they're really kind of very focused on whatever it is they're focused on, whether it's selling or talking to people or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So you'd think it'd be more of a free for all, but it's actually people are busy. People are working.
Well, they didn't look too busy for the first few days.
Well, there wasn't a lot of people. That is true.
Yeah, but it's looking good today, and there's actually people interested in walking around and acting very intelligent.
Well, I mean, the big problem is that, it's the first edition of this fair, and they got a bunch of galleries from outside of Denmark to come, also pretty far away, without having any sort of foundation. They don't know what the deal's.
Yeah, they have no idea if there's even a market for some of these artists in Denmark itself. And I think, one of the things I was saying the other night was, Copenhagen isn't really, one of these cities where people travel through. Like, for instance, when you go to Brussels, for instance, is in the middle of Central Europe, and also at the same time, people can go in there and out there really quite easily. Whereas Copenhagen is more of a very specific city where you've come here just, for one main reason. It's. Yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but when it comes to some of the galleries, it's a big challenge and also a risk for them almost, because I think it's a very narrower demographic that might buy the work, and the audience is obviously much smaller.
Well, in a small remember, Denmark's only 6 million people, right?
Yeah.
So there's only so many collectors.
Of course.
And they already have their relationships because there's a hell of a lot of galleries here already.
Yeah.
And now, so what is the actual demand? But it's going to be hard without people supporting the foreign galleries. This fair would not exist, really.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be really tough to keep doing it unless they feel like they want to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also as well if the audience actually enjoys the fair too, because they might not be interested in some of the galleries. But being here is an interesting kind of division between the selected fair and also Code. Obviously, Code is much more contemporary, more established, bigger names, and I think that people who come along here and pay to be here, I think they might be a little bit confused. So
it is unclear, and people actually stop here in front of my stand and ask me, "How do I get out? What's going on over here? Wait,
yeah.
There's another fair." It has been fairly unclear for a lot of people.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably problematic.
Sure, but yeah, definitely. But for the first year as well, it's there'll be a few issues I'm sure they'll iron out for the next edition.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think overall it's strong. There's some good work in there, some good galleries that are very well respected.
I think Code looks great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a great space too. It's almost like they should do it where there's a 3-minute walk between the fairs. You have to cross some sort of space or boundary where they're like, oh no, that's over there. You're like, oh okay, and then you hoof it over there, and it has its own vibe in a way.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree with that. But even here, it's a little divide, but it's maybe not big enough really. And at the same time, too, when there's bigger fairs happening, like in Brussels, for instance, you get the collectors going there and they know they can jump between different fairs, but probably see the same artists they like or the same kind of style of work they like. But here, very much, you got one type of collector who'll either do Code or do selected. I don't think the same type of collector would do both at fairs because they're so opposite.
I agree.
So it's
also a little tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because you maybe say Basel and Volta or some of those other ones. They it's not as much the style of art that's different. It's the how long the gallery's been around, how long they've been networking, etc. There's just as good art.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more experimental or whatever, but here they are really, in a lot of ways, night and day, at least to my eyes.
Oh, hugely. But I think I haven't spoken to enough galleries in regards to feedback about how many collectors actually coming through the door. Like, I've heard it's been good. Exact numbers I'd be interested in finding out, but I would love to actually speak to maybe some of the people who are showing and selected, just to see if they've actually got any sales at all.
I haven't seen a lot of happy faces.
No,
I don't have any specific numbers, or but the general vibe is not one of clicking heels and cackling laughter. But I mean, that's the weird thing about an art fair too, is because it's a public event and you want a lot of people to come through, but there's different levels. There's people, the art going public, who are not necessarily the buying public, who just want to come in and engage and see. And then there's the collectors, and that's a very smaller, it's a tiny group of people in reality. So you can say, oh, there's nobody here, but if they're selling, it doesn't matter in that sense. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to money. They spend a fortune to come here. So, there has to be some sort of baseline. Yeah, I think when it comes down to when with audience, and if people are going to come along just as spectators and not actually buy, it's you then have to put an educational program into the fair to obviously, let people understand why is they're here in the first place, and also maybe they'll change their mind and maybe invest in buy a work or something. But what I've noticed as well, there's not enough talks happening. Really, at the back of the fair, there's a huge space that's pretty much completely ignored. I think they could utilise that space a bit better, and at the same time as well, I think there should be double the amount of talks, really. And if anything, there should be more talks for people who are like completely novices when it comes to buying art. And secondly as well, which I've found, it's supposed to be an international fair where it's primarily focusing on European and North American galleries, but so several of the talks are purely only in Danish, which I think if what's happening is actually negatively dividing the audience because they're feeling left out. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if you're doing an international fair, the language pretty much has to be English, to be honest, because
that's what we're doing here. There's 50% galleries not from Denmark. That's that's what's happening. So they need to follow that through to the end.
In every way.
And I think you're right. I think there's a really interesting initiative out of Atlanta in the United States about developing photography collectors.
Okay.
And it's this woman who's really put a lot of effort into. She has a grant, for example. She has a $10,000 grant for people who come up with good ideas about engaging non-art going publics with art. And that sort of thing actually really, there isn't a lot of that. The art world doesn't tend to reach outside of its own frame to try to bring people in.
Yeah, I guess so.
I just thought about what you said just now about how maybe having a talk about like, hey, have you never bought art? Well, check this out. Here's some people who do this, and here's why they do it. And
Well, I think it'd be interesting to actually, when you go to most fairs, the talks are all very similar. You'll have two people who are supposedly like specialists in that particular area, and they'll sit and they'll have they're supposed to discuss one thing, but they end up just milking each other's egos, and they barely go into the actual point of the discussion. But I think it would be quite interesting to change that system and get to the point where it's actually not like round table discussions, but people in the audience are actually more so encouraged to actually be part of the conversation. And if anything, the people up on the stage, they should be like moderators of it, as opposed to just talking about what they think.
Well, they tried to make some round table discussions, but they didn't advertise them enough. Every day I'm actually supposed to be part of them, and every day nobody shows up.
Well,
and I think that's a lack of knowledge about it.
Sure. Maybe not enough outreach to people,
Exactly.
But no, this morning I went to an event that was pretty much primarily for Danish artists and curators, and this was outside of the fair, and it was like a thing called speed dating, and basically there was I forgot the name of the venue which it was organised in, but basically what happens there is like a big gallery space. That's where I got the books from earlier.
Den free.
And the speed dating was maybe 10 curators, something like that, and they all had their name on a table, and they sat at the same table, and artists were invited, and basically the artists had to jump from one curator to the next curator to the next curator and present their work and have a 20-minute dialogue. And
Did they get feedback? Was it a portfolio review kind of thing, or was it more like, am I interested? Will we get some sort of relationship out of this?
Yeah, I think both, and at the same time as well. I think maybe I think good curators should always have their ear to the ground and understand what artists are thinking about, so they're always current. You know.
Well, a good forum for that is good because I mean, so many people. If you're a gallery or a curator or whatever, there's a flying wall of shit coming at you constantly.
Yeah.
So if you have some sort of space for it, where you say, okay, we're going to delineate a time for this, and this is what's happening now. They can be more open.
Yeah.
They can be more receptive. There's no pressure. There isn't this whole like, please let me in, kind of thing. So that's another thing which kind of maybe needs more infrastructure in reality.
Sure. But I think it was such an interesting kind of format. But at the same time, I think everybody expects typical talks at fairs, but the fair could quite easily actually be a bit more innovative and actually create a new format for these talks. And I'm trying to make a bit of a comparison here. Like, it could be quite good to have this kind of like speed dating idea at a fair. Why not? Like, why not have some leading artists and leading gallerists sitting down and for an hour. Maybe like 100 people can go in or something like that or whatever, but they get like 5 minutes with each person.
Right.
And then they walk away, and it's like engagement, education, and also as well they actually feel involved in the arts, as opposed to there being this division where the gallery or whatever doesn't want to talk to the public unless they're buying only. I think there's definitely a responsibility from a fair, and everybody's involved in a fair, making sure that the audience is 100% engaged.
I definitely think that all these great ideas are popping into my head now that you're saying this, because that's absolutely right. Because a fair is not really. Most fairs have not really jumped out of the frame that they built in order to make them, but they've become such a powerful force in the art world that it makes a lot of sense to try to combine forces, like have artists do a fair which was 50% artist run, 50% gallery run, for example.
Yeah.
Or curators or non-commercial interests, blending it together. Clearly, motherfuckers need to make money. We know this,
of course,
but if you want to engage the public, develop some sort of project, do any sort of thing.
Yeah.
The strictly commercial frame is not great.
Yeah, but then it's more about institutions who are not necessarily sales orientated, and you can go along there, see some good art, and then you won't sell. Obviously, nothing's for sale. That's these institutions are more kind of educational kind of platforms and spaces, and also the shows there obviously mark the kind of level of professionalism of the artists who are involved. But if you had a fair, for instance, that wasn't necessarily sales orientated. And then it comes down to more, I would say, like academic level kind of art, because it's more orientated not towards sales, but it's more focusing on like theoretical kind of academic style artwork.
But what about a hybrid?
Yeah.
If possible,
Yeah, like I kind of I think about this a lot, and I speak to a few people about this, but I think you get these kind of collective spaces that pop up in each city, and they're kind of free. I don't know, how can I put this? Like, there's just non-sales based collective spaces and
artist-driven spaces, etc.
Spaces, stuff like that. But generally, a lot of the artists who are involved in those, and I don't want to overly generalise what I want me to say, but they're very academic, and they're quite. They're not really going to be making work that's going to sell that easily.
Right.
So if you had this kind of fair, like you said. It could be good, but I think it'll be very hard to get a huge audience through.
Yeah. Well, it's getting everybody on board and bringing their own, world to that. If you could do that, then...
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, too, a lot of these spaces that, maybe don't have much funding... how much of an attraction, do they have, like... by the mass public, If you think about this, the galleries out here, they spend a lot of money generally on marketing too, and their names are constantly popping up on social media, in magazines, even referenced in books, and artist CVs, and some of these other kind of spaces, like nobody really heard of them,
Well, they come and they go too, they don't have
fleeting,
a financial basis for long-term survival.
Yeah, but they do some like brilliant shows to do. But
also, I mean, like in New York, there was for several years an artist-driven art fair, which was not academic or theoretical. These were just there was a selection process, so the quality was fairly high of artists selling directly to collectors.
What was it called? Do you remember? Or?
See, that's the goddamn thing. I don't remember. But it was very well received. It worked, because usually those things end up being a shit show.
Yeah, there's a lot of them are kind of really bad.
But they had a model which seemed to function. And I know it was in a hotel lobby. Or not the lobby, but like they had one of those like, conference center kind of deals.
Yeah.
But through the act of selection and curating the participation, they created something which actually was very well received. And that sort of thing gives me hope.
Yeah, definitely. I think it really depends on the quality of the curators in the first place to do this. Like, I think maybe I'm speaking very generalized, but obviously it could be super high quality, or it could be very questionable, like some of the fairs maybe we've seen before that are artists, managed, but they can be really quite poor, but then they could be fantastic.
Yeah, but they usually end up jumping on over to the, maybe an artist starts a gallery, but then they're just a gallerist at the end of the day. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
But what about you? What about this article you're writing for
Blue and Art Info? Yeah. It's well, it's just going to be a review of the fair and some highlights of the fair, of whose work I think has been, interesting. And I do I run a thing called Haunted Projects, which is like artist interviews. I do this.
Oh, that's your thing? Because you told me about it the other day. I didn't realize that was yours.
Yeah, 100 Projects is all the interviews I've done. And yeah, it's good fun. And I also do that at the same time as my own practice of, painting. So it's kind of nice to mix it up. And obviously a lot of the artists who are showing here at Code, I've been aware of their work for a long time. But I live in Edinburgh, so it's very hard to see some of the works in person. So it's nice, and the article which I'm writing will obviously incorporate, a fair few artists who I've known for a long time, and I really admire their work. And there's also been a few artists I've never even seen before, and it's been nice to discover their work here at the fair. So, yeah, I think the article will mix both my personal interests, like from my kind of Haunted Projects background, and also as well, I'm trying to be quite fair, and also highlighting some new artists who I just haven't I didn't know before Wednesday last week. And also I've been returning to a lot of the same works because I've been here daily, and just seeing if it's still having the same kind of effect on me.
That helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely, as opposed to just seeing it on like an Instagram image or just by photographing a computer, because everything looks glossy and nice on a phone.
It's true. It all kind of looks the same too, in a weird way.
Yeah, you get no understanding of depth, texture, surface, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
But I mean, that is probably one of the things you could say about art fairs, is that it's you really do have to spend the time, because you can easily go walk through the whole thing in 15 minutes and be like, done it,
Easy. You could easily do that. And especially because Code isn't that big, you could probably do that in 15 minutes quite easily.
Yeah.
But, there's some really good work, engaging work. There's new works I've, never seen before. And, I think the kind of Perez project space here, is really, brilliant. They've obviously made the most of it. And what other spaces? Also,
is that your favorite so far?
I don't
or
really
something
have,
like that?
No, I just like what they've done, because they've got a painting that's like 9 meters long, and it's kind of different for the fair too. And they've also got like a floor installation at the same time. So it's been an interesting space to kind of walk through. I don't know who else has been kind of standing out for me. Don't know. I think I've got favourite galleries from here, so I'm not going to name drop just gallery names, but
sure.
I don't know. It's been some really good things.
It's a nice setup. It works. I mean, aside from all the other kind of satellite issues around it, if you take just the fair, just the core of Code itself, I would say it's nice. It's well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's they have a pretty ambitious program. They invited people who have not been in Denmark before and tried to present.
That's true.
Something, and the hope is that there's enough action to make it interesting for people to come back again next year.
Yeah, I think it was interesting as well. Like, I was speaking to Steve Turner, and Steve Turner actually started out. I think the first time he said he was in Copenhagen was 33 years ago, and he came over to Copenhagen and fell in love with the place, and started collecting like old like paper-based works from like old booksellers, and he's been here many times, but it's the first time he's actually exhibited in Copenhagen, obviously, like through a fair. and for him, he was like, this. It's almost like a full circular thing finally, because one time like 33 years ago he was here, but probably never imagined finally showing. And there's multiple other galleries I'm sure have got similar stories, but
well, here's to it happening next year. That's my hope. That it remains international, because there's just not enough Danish galleries to make it this interesting. You need that dynamic kind of collaborative.
I think as well, like we said, as long as it's busy enough, hopefully I'll come back. But the galleries here, like for instance, like Steve's, he had a personal draw to come here as well because of his past. Some of the other galleries here, they might just do it once,
right?
You know what I mean? And just maybe not be interested.
Right, but, and that's the nature of it. Everybody knows there's no guarantee when you sign up for something like this. Good luck. That's what's, everybody does their best to make it happen, but no one knows what's going to happen.
True, very true. But no, I'm very positive. But,
so, wait, tell me about Hunted Projects. Let's talk about that for just a second here.
Yeah, Hunted Projects, actually, it's quite an interesting little story there. Basically, I did my master's degree in curating and art theory at Edinburgh College of Art. And whilst I was studying there, I was doing a little bit of curating, like doing pop-up like group shows in like bars and little kind of found spaces and stuff, hireable rooms in like hotels, whatever. And basically, when it got to a point where I kind of want to make a bit more serious, so I was like lying in bed one night and I was like, all right, okay, I need to kind of launch something. And this is before I started on the projects. I was basically curating shows just through like the name of the venue that I was doing it in or whatever. So yeah, one night I was in bed and basically I had this kind of like idea. I was like, I'm going to start up a new kind of curatorial project. Within 2 weeks, I came up with the name Hunted Projects, and then I also had 28 artists, like DJs, bands. I took over a huge space in Edinburgh and launched Hunted Projects, and there was about like 300 people in opening night, a huge party, and then basically I did monthly exhibitions around Edinburgh. And I think it lasted for maybe around like a year or so of just constantly doing this, and it was all like non-sales, but I was basically featuring really good artists from Scotland. There was a few guys from New York that exhibited as well. And then, I was starting to realise that the actual dialogue with the artist was the thing that I was becoming more interested in. So I've kind of slacked a little bit on the curatorial side, but I find that the interviews I do with Hunted Projects today is it's important because I'm selecting artists, very consciously, much like a curator would do, a curated exhibition. I don't like interviewing just anybody. I try to understand the artist's practice and also at the same time have a bit of a relationship with those artists and interview them because I'm passionate about their work,
Yeah. Where do people find that? Where can they engage with that?
Online.
Google it, Hunted Projects.
Yeah, huntedprojects.com.
Yeah, I checked it out. At first, I thought it was, like, when you told me about it the other day, I thought it was a gallery. And then I was kind of confused.
Well, they started, like, when I was doing when I was doing the curated exhibitions, it was under the moniker of Hunted Projects. And I don't want to drop the name because I don't like this idea of it being so connected to my name,
That's the same with this program.
Yeah, I like to keep it kind of anonymous in a sense because people, become familiar with Hunted Projects, and there's a lot of people I've met here actually at Code. And I tell them I'm Stephen Cox, I also do Hunted Projects, and they're like, oh wow, you're Hunted Projects. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, cool, I really like your interviews and what you do and stuff. Whereas if it was just like Stephen Cox, people then would say, oh, but you're a painter and interviewer and this, and it's just too mixed. And I like to try and have that division with myself, with what I do. Yeah,
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, but no, at the moment, I've got tons of interviews coming out in the next probably couple of months. I've got. I'm not even going to say any name just in case anything happens. But
check it out. Just go see it.
Check it out.
All right, cool. Well, do you have anything else you want to add about Code or about any of it? I guess people should go check out your work too. Just don't confuse it with Hunted Projects. Yeah,
you can see that on stephencox.co.uk. But I've got an upcoming show in October with Anaruma Gallery in Naples, in Italy. So, back in Edinburgh, I'm just kind of finishing up a bunch of...
Time to get to work.
New work, yeah, which is cool. But
great. Well, we'll put links to everything up on the on the show notes here.
Yeah. How are you feeling? Are you tired?
I'm pretty, I'm tired. I mean, it's hard, because I'm like, here we have this booth and it's for talking with people, but when nobody's here, I'm kind of like trying to engage with the public, and you have that whole like, hey, nice to meet you, hey,
Yeah, come here.
And it's tiring. It's psychologically tiring. And then, when you at these events going on in the city, you end up staying up late, you end up talking to people, you end up having a beer too many, so by the end of it, you're pretty rallied.
Yeah. Have you spoken to many people just like Joe Blogs, just random people, to see what they think of the fair as well?
I haven't, and I would love to. The problem is, I think, my location here is a little weird where I am physically in the fair, and I think people don't really stop to engage.
Yeah.
I feel like I should be inside of Code.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, it's a good experience. I'm glad I did it, and I'm also going to be glad when I get all this furniture delivered back and get to sleep in a little bit.
Looks good. I like the style.
It's definitely there's nothing else like it here. I'll say that.
Well, it brings a new level of shabby chic kind of to it. That's cool. I like that.
Well, shout out to Red Cross. Everything's copped from there.
Oh yeah, everybody should donate more. So I'll just give you the furniture for next year. Would you come back next year then? Yeah.
If it was if I wasn't right where I am right now here,
yeah, I
would be happy to come back. But I want to do more of a visual installation.
Cool.
Because obviously it's a sound piece, but people don't really know how to engage with it on that level.
Yeah.
I want to create an exhibition of either works by people who've been on the show, or an installation by hire an artist to come make something.
That sounds
because I
interesting.
want more engagement with the public, and just having microphones I don't think draws people in.
Yeah,
they're just kind of like, what is this? Is this what's going on over here? So that's the whole thing. Is like next time more visual experience.
Sure. And how's the support been as well from the fair itself?
They've been very supportive. There's been some organizational misunderstandings, as there are often.
Yeah.
With these sort of things, but I mean, they were. I suggested the idea to them, and they jumped right on it, and they've facilitated this space, you could say, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess also the question is whether this here is a media project I do or some sort of practice thing I do. And I don't know if you have the same questions about hunted projects, but I've kept it separated. It's not a practice.
Yeah, I try and keep it separated as well. I get people asking me regularly, are you going to open a gallery? I'm like, well, no, I'm happy with what I do just now, how it works. I think people who know about it enjoy it for what it is. I think, if anything, it'd be more about filling other people's expectations about opening a gallery, because it seems like the obvious idea. But no, I like there being a division, because I think that artists need more opportunities to actually speak about their work. I'm just basically a facilitator that makes it happen.
Yeah.
I don't know many other artists who also do much writing in that sense. You do get really nice text by artists who do text on behalf of other artists, for like introductions to books.
Sure.
But there's not tons of it online. There's not loads. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's also a balance between having time for your own practice and having, the energy to do other projects. You don't want it to step too much in the way of your original goal, which was your own work.
Well, exactly, yeah. There's definitely times when I'm doing maybe like a difficult interview with an artist, particularly, if somebody who's like really quite theoretical, you've got to go and do quite a lot of research. And I think at the moment with 100 projects, there's something like 50 interviews or something like that online. With a lot of the painters, I understand their practices anyway, but when it comes to more installation or sculptural kind of artists, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and maybe you have a show like you just mentioned, and you really should be focusing on that.
Yeah, totally.
So that is where it becomes a little bit. It can be. If you had a gallery, imagine how much more work that would be.
Yeah, of course. That would just be insane. Yeah, no way. No way. And I'm happy with the painting. And, at the moment, I'm kind of taking a small step back from the 100 Projects interviews to just be in the studio every day. I'm in the studio like 14, 15 hours a day, just working all the time. And at least 6 days a week I'm in the studio.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. Well, you got to get, you got to put the hours in to get the work made, And it's like, my painting is really, labor intensive. It's a lot of layering in my paintings. And, you got a lot of these like painters here. They're very, process driven. So, they could probably knock out some of the paintings like really quite quick, to an extent. And I mean that in a really kind of positive, polite manner, because I love their works. But because I'm using oil paint, and it's really thick oil paint too, I'm probably working on like something like 5 or 6 paintings at once.
Is that like a drying thing? It's got to like dry in between.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just time. There's never enough hours in the day.
It's always fucking time.
It's always time. But well, thanks for
coming on. And next time you come back to Copenhagen, we'll have you on to talk more about your own work.
Yeah, I'll be up for that. That sounds good.
Cool, man. Thanks. Cool. Appreciate it.
Cheers, dudes. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Undergang Armchair. The intro and outro music was kindly provided by Johnny Ripper, and today's interstitial music was provided by RC. You can find links to their music and tons of other conversations with great people on our convention center of a website, undergang.net. If you do like this show, we would greatly appreciate it if you take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. It helps other people find the program. This show is produced in part with the kind support of the Danish Arts Council. Thank you for joining us.